PMDG 737-800 is out. Should you get it? Everyone, it's Hotchmania, and PMDG has released the 737-800 after releasing the 700 and 600 variants, both planes that were great, but, I think a lot of people were really looking at the 800, and maybe even some people still waiting for the 900 to come out, but more on that later. In the meantime, PMDG has released the Boeing 737-800 for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and the new airplane, which comes in at a cost of $69.99 for the early adopter period, at which point it will actually go up to $74.99 and then maybe go back on sale at other points, but somewhere in that ballpark, about $70 or so, give or take. The 800 has been released in August. Don't forget that the 700 was released in May and the 600 in July. Now, these planes, in terms of their systems and how they work, are pretty similar. Obviously, the size of the plane is the main difference between the 600, 700, and 800. So if you already own one of these other aircraft, then the 800 experience should be pretty much the same as you've experienced with other variants in the PMDG line of 737s. When you purchase the PMDG 737-800 package, you get a couple different variants. The passenger variant, the BBJ2 variant, and the BDSF and BCF cargo variants. And you get all those planes for one price, which is not a bad deal. That also comes, by the way, with a full set of ground equipment for each aircraft type, VIP vehicles for the BBJ2, and cargo handling for the cargo variants of the airplanes. You can also select between winglets or split scimitar models for each of the aircraft. Now, the main appeal, quite frankly, of the PMDG 737, the reason to buy it, is because it is a high-fidelity 737. In Microsoft Flight Simulator, high-fidelity aircraft are still very much at a premium. We've talked a lot on this channel about the Phoenix A320 and the fly-by-wire A320neo, both of which are pretty darn good. In fact, the Phoenix certainly achieving a very high level of fidelity. And PMDG 737 line has been pretty impressive. It certainly achieves a high level of fidelity, especially compared to the airplanes that came before it, of which very few ever reached that threshold of being truly high fidelity, even, dare I say the word that I hate to use, study level. None of them are, but it's closer than most other airplanes in there. Certainly, if your goal is to get payware aircraft for Microsoft Flight Simulator with the highest level of fidelity, the deepest system simulations, then this 737 is what you're looking for. According to PMDG, it has accurate, true-to-life flight modeling dynamics, a precise custom autopilot system, and plenty of other features, including obviously VNAV and LNAV, which is really important. Now, if there's one feature that is still missing from the PMDG 737-800, that is an EFB. Yeah, the tablet has been talked about for a while, and there's no weather radar either. Both of these features have been highly requested ever since the 700 came out early this year, but they're still in development and should be a free update as soon as Sim Update 10 is released by Microsoft. So, depending on when you're watching this video, this may or may not already be a feature that's out there, but it is notable that the EFB is missing. So instead of configuring your fuel and passengers and other features of the airplane like pushback, which are all here, by the way, instead of doing it via tablet, you're going to be doing it via the flight computer in the FMC towards the bottom. Not a big deal, just certainly not as user-friendly or as obvious, and you've got to dig into the systems. When it comes to the PMDG, it certainly has a lot of systems to enjoy, a lot of features. There are failures, and plenty of things you can configure the way that you like them. That's certainly one of the many reasons and examples of how high fidelity this particular aircraft is. Something else that you'll like about the PMDG is it comes with the PMDG Operations Center 2.0, which has a number of real-world and fictional liveries that you can install for free very easily and not have to go to any third-party places. You just click on there, find the one that you want, and you're good to go. And it certainly has most of the carriers thing most people do, especially considering that the 737-800 is a variant of the 737 that's still very much in use in the real world these days. And for a lot of people, that's very important to get their favorite airline in there. Of course, with it being a PMDG product, the load times in Microsoft Flight Simulator tend to be longer than other ones. Certainly the Phoenix is the fastest of the high fidelity, and I'm not sure if the PMDG or the fly-by-wire is slower in loading. Not a big deal. All the planes are pretty slow in terms of their general loading in Microsoft Flight Simulator, but certainly the first time you load this airplane up, you can go and step away and get a cup of coffee because it probably will still be going by the time you get back. But once you're in the plane, the performance is actually much better than the Airbuses that I have in the form of the Phoenix or the fly-by-wire. High frames, good performance. That's a really nice benefit of the PMDG. Something else that's true of all the PMDGs that I particularly don't like is the fact that the cabin is not modeled, which makes the camera views cumbersome and annoying if you're used to the fly-by-wire A320neo and the fact that you can't set up camera views in the cabin. Then this is pretty much the same thing. Not the end of the world. There are some hacks out there to get around that, but compared to the Phoenix, where you can just simply set them up much easier, it's a bit of a step back in that regard when comparing the two. Then, of course, there's the fact that you're paying about $70 or so for one particular variant of the 737 family. And if you're interested in getting other variants, like maybe the 700, the 600, or the maybe when the Max comes out at some point later, you'd have to pay for them individually, or you could sit on the sidelines and wait for a package deal, but you'll be sitting on the sidelines for quite a while. Basically, you're paying a lot of money if you're getting more than one variant, if that's of interest to you. So really, you're asking, well, should I get the PMDG 737-800? It really boils down to a couple of factors that are going to be important to you. Certainly, on the surface, the plane is great. This is not a problem at all compared to the variants that came before it from PMDG. It's virtually indistinguishable, other than, of course, the fact that one is at 800 versus 600 or 700. So there's no real difference in terms of performance or how it handles or anything else like that. I have no qualms about recommending the PMDG 737-800 in and of itself, but there may be some reasons why you wouldn't want to pick it up. As I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in getting more than one, it's going to get pretty darn pricey. And for a lot of people, it's very much at the high end of the price structure. Don't forget that the Phoenix A320 comes in at least $20 cheaper than the PMDG 737, and that's for one plane. If you obviously got more than one type of 737, you can start adding up quite a bit. Now, of course, if money's not an issue for you, or you just can afford these kinds of things, keeping in mind that each variant is many months in between, so, different building cycles, maybe not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but it is a factor to keep in mind. Certainly, the very slow load times are an annoyance. As I mentioned earlier, all planes in Microsoft Flight Simulator kind of take a while to load in, but the PMDG certainly seems to take a long time. And on top of it, as of right now, there is no EFB for it. For people that are kind of new to flight simming or like having that option there, I certainly do, it's a missing feature. It will go in there. PMDG has said it will be coming in there, so this will be a moot point at some point, but it is worth mentioning as its current state. Overall, I'm really impressed by the product. I've been impressed by it since the 700. I just didn't particularly care for the 700 or the 600 for that matter. But the fact there's now an 800 and soon to be a 900, PMDG has finally landed an airplane that I think is worth paying attention to because I prefer real-world planes that are still flown today as opposed to classic aviation. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the PMDG 737 from Microsoft Flight Simulator, and if you're going to pick it up, and if you did pick it up, let me know your thoughts on the reviews and what you'd recommend for anybody looking to purchase this particular payware aircraft. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. That way, YouTube lets you know when we have a brand new video to share. This has been Hotchmania. We'll talk again real soon.